This is Echo 103. Welcome to study session 6. Transport and communication sectors and the Nigerian economy. Introduction. In this study session, we will explore the different modes of transportation in Nigeria. We will also highlight the means of communication in Nigeria. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to present the different modes of transportation in Nigeria, highlight the means of sending messages in Nigeria. Transportation in Nigeria. Transport is an indispensable element in the socio-economic transformation of any nation. If adequately provided, transportation has the potentials of quickening the pace of industrial growth of a country. In Nigeria, it is one of the major means of holding the geopolitical, social, and economic systems together. It offers support to the services, productive, and social sectors, and has a way of enhancing poverty reduction and wealth creation. In playing these developmental roles, one agrees that all the modes of transport system should be given adequate attention. Good roads, canals, and navigable rivers, by diminishing the expense of carriage, put the remote part of the country more nearly upon a level with those in the neighborhood of the town. They are upon that account the greatest of all improvements. They encourage the cultivation of the remote, which must always be the most expensive circle of the country. They are advantageous to the town by breaking down the monopoly of the country in each neighborhood. They are advantageous even to that part of the country. Though they introduce some rival commodities into the old market, they open many new markets to its produce. That was Adam Smith. In Nigeria today, all the transport subsectors suffer from the effects of past shortages of resources, and this inadequacy has constantly reflected in the neglect of their maintenance. More so, the interaction among different modes of transport in Nigeria is very low. In the light of long distances, difficult terrain, and climatic conditions, the Nigerian transport system poses special problems if the economy must advance its developmental trend. The cost of constructing transportation facilities is generally high in Nigeria because of our difficult topography, especially in the southeastern part and the central and northern eastern part. The nature of the soil, the heavy rainfall in the coastal regions in particular, and the poor drainage conditions in general make it difficult and very expensive to maintain roads and rail transport facilities. Be that as it may, significant efforts have been made to improve the sector in the past 5 years. The railway system is being rehabilitated and maintained with the hope of their better repositioning. In the aviation subsector, an extensive level of liberalization has been witnessed in the recent years, involving a transportation system that is public-private partnership driven is the focus of the government. Therefore, the government aims to develop an adequate, environmentally safe, sound, efficient, affordable, and seamless intermodal transport system in line with the global best practices. Modes of transportation in Nigeria. According to Ockmont 1987, the transportation modes in operation in Nigeria are road, railway, air, inland waterways, sea, and pipelines. We shall examine these modes one after the other. Roads. In Nigeria, it is the roads that carry the bulk of product and passenger traffic. Road networks are limited and in poor condition, with only about 31% of them paved. The poor state of road networks in Nigeria has greatly contributed to the high cost of living and doing business. The responsibility of road development in Nigeria is shared among the three tiers of government, namely the federal, the state, and the local government. Oakmont 1987 asserts that in terms of length of roads maintained in 1972, the federal government owned 11.12%, the state government 22.2%, and the local authorities 66.68%. In terms of the conditions of roads, 61.07% of the federal roads were paved as at 1972, followed by the state roads with 41.72%, and then the local authority roads with only 4.4%. It is in feeder road construction that Nigeria has made the greatest use of unemployed labor in creating capital. However, the greatest handicap of the feeder roads project is that most of them are isolated projects instead of being a part of a rural development investment package. With a road density of about 64.4 kilometers per 100 square kilometers and over 4,189 persons per kilometer of road, Nigeria's road network is grossly inadequate. Upon 1987 goes on to state that with poor interconnection between existing roads and between roads and other transport modes, and coupled with poor maintenance, the road transport situation in Nigeria is really chaotic. According to the World Bank, inadequate transport facilities in Nigeria make marketing costs rather high. The Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, FEMA, is responsible for road maintenance and rehabilitation in Nigeria. Railways. It was a railway supported by coal that opened up trade and other relations between the northern and the southern parts of Nigeria and facilitated the movement of groundnut and cotton to Lagos and Port Harcourt for an onward shipment to overseas markets. Obviously, the railway has contributed to the industrial and commercial growth of Lagos, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Zaria, Ilori, Ibadan, Jos, Kano, Aba, and Kaduna. The railway systems of Nigeria comprises of two main lines, namely the Western and Eastern line, with each starting from a port and running through northwards. At this junction, suffice to say that lack of resources needed to keep rail tracks, rolling stocks, and maintenance of facilities so as to be in reasonable working conditions has made the railway system deteriorate rapidly. The agency legally established to manage and control the Nigerian Railway is the Nigerian Railway Corporation, NRC. It was established in 1955. The NRC operates as a commercial enterprise, but being a public utility corporation, the federal government sometimes influences its policies, including pricing. Study the article below on efficiency of economy of service in Nigerian Railway and join study session 5 for all. Efficiency and economy of service in Nigerian Railway. Going by the existing trend in the railway subsector of the transport sector, one would adjudge the performance to be abysmal. A comparison of railway and road statistics of passengers and freight traffic shows that the railway has indeed lost its premier position to road transport. Oakmont 1987. This loss in passenger and goods traffic means a loss in the revenue of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. Okpong asserts that the cumulative loss by the railway on passenger traffic from 1960 to 61 to 1977-73 amounted to 31.83 million. The main factors responsible for the loss of revenue by the railway transport system in Nigeria are the following. The major factor is that almost all the railway lines in Nigeria are parallel, side by side, and having the same distance, by heavily used Trunk A and B roads owned and managed by the federal and state government respectively. Airways, and this has brought about a high level of competition between railway and the road transport system in both passenger and goods traffic. The railway is no longer able to provide efficient and reliable services to customers. The stations lack the basic facilities for passenger comfort. Inadequate and inefficient equipment, defective locomotives, and rolling stock. The low average speed of 32 kilometers per hour maintained by the rails has contributed to the loss in passenger traffic. Efficiency and maximum productivity have thus turned to luxury as the government owns, operates, manages, funds, and controls the Nigerian railway system. Plans for improving the railway. The following captures the plans towards improving the railway subsector. Modernization of the railway system based on international design criteria and on an entirely new road bed and track system at standard gauge. In the opinion of Okpong, all new projects in the subsector, especially construction of new lines and the connectivity of new areas, should be based on realistic forecast of traffic demand, especially the freight traffic, concessions of the lines, rehabilitation of locomotive and rolling stocks, traffic repair, institutional reconstruction of NRC as a regulatory and development authority, commencement of Lagos-Abuja-Kano standard gauge, extension of the central line standard gauge. Airways, the main transport mode used for tourists, high-value export and import and perishable goods is the air transport. Air travel can as well be called commercial aviation. Okpong 1987 states that Nigeria moved into the air transport age in 1959 when it took over the operation of Nigerian internal air services from the West African Airways Corporation Limited, which was set up in 1946 by the former British West African countries Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. Before the liberalization witnessed in the Nigerian aviation industry, Nigerian Airways was the body that managed air transport in Nigeria, and it was solely owned by the federal government. Airports staffed and operated by the Civil Aviation Division of the Federal Ministry of Transport include Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Kano, Jos, Benin, Enugu, Calabar, Maiduguri, Ibadan, Sokoto, Yola, and so on. However, some degree of liberalization has taken place in the Nigerian aviation industry in the recent past. This was a follow-up from the collapse and final liquidation of the Nigerian Airways. The liberalization of the aviation industry has resulted in active private sector participation in the industry. Efficiency and high productivity are beginning to set into the industry. Problems of air transport in Nigeria. Poor investment and weak regulatory oversight over the years have rendered the Nigerian airspace unsafe. Lack of funds and high-level managerial personnel have affected the operational efficiency of the airways. There is shortage of aviation engineers and technicians. Prospect and improvement. In 2006, the federal government enacted the Civil Aviation Act with the aim of making the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority autonomous with increased funding. An accident investigation bureau was also created. The decision to concession the Abuja airport is another notable step taken in the aviation subsector. The management and control of sea transportation is the sole responsibility of the Nigerian Port Authority, created in 1954. The high level of corruption that has bedeviled the authority, as was made public in the recent court recommendation of a 2-year jail term for its former chairman, Chief Bode George, has not allowed the authority to appreciate the virtue of efficiency and optimum performance. This was a follow-up from the collapse and final liquidation of the Nigerian Airways. The liberalization of the aviation industry has resulted in active private sector participation in the industry. Investment and weak oversight over the efficiency of the airways. There is shortage of aviation engineers and technicians. Civil Aviation Act with the aim of making the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority created. The decision to concession the Abuja airport is another notable step taken, is the sole responsibility of the Nigerian Port Authority, created in the aviation subsector. The management and control of sea transportation created. The decision to concession the Abuja airport is another notable step taken in the aviation subsector. The management and control of sea transportation is the sole responsibility of the Nigerian Port Authority, created in 1954. The high level of corruption that has bedeviled the authority, as was made public in the recent court recommendation of a 2-year jail term for its former chairman, Chief Bode George, has not allowed the authority to appreciate the virtue of efficiency and optimum performance. It is not disputable that maritime transport offers one of the lowest costs in terms of transporting heavy and bulky items. In Nigeria, 8 ports are in existence. There are 25 terminals, most of which have been conceded to private participation in the subsector. However, the 2 main ports in Nigeria are the Lagos and Port Harcourt ports. Together, they handle about 90% of Nigeria's import and 80% of our export. It is notable that Lagos is the larger of the 2. Other minor ports that exist include Bonny, Sapele, Burutu, Warri, Calabar, Koko, and so on. The export of petroleum necessitated the development of the Bonny seaport. Problems of sea transportation in Nigeria. The problem of sea transport in Nigeria are multifarious. We shall now present them as captured in Okmon 1987. Inadequate facilities at the ports have increased the turnaround time of ships, thus causing continued increase in freight rates and an increase in social costs generally. Deficiency in port operation and administration, inability to forecast demand for port facilities, deficiency in port maintenance, leading to frequent breakdown of plants and equipment, thus causing congestion at ports and unnecessary delay to ship. Poor technological and economic forecasting in relation to port development. Poor communication with customers, shippers, forwarding agents, shareholders, Nigerian Railway Corporation, and road haulers. Prospect and improvement. The 1970 to 1974 development plan had large allocations to affect an improvement in port facilities. In addition, the 1975-1980 development plans paid greater attention to improvement in port facilities, port management, and operations. In recent times, the government conducted a performance evaluation of ports and realized the urgent need to carry out reform in the subsector through the concession of the port. Only 2002 maintains that the inland water transport (IWT) in Nigeria is at infancy. To him, the subsector has remained underdeveloped and underexploited as a mode of transport in spite of its important role in transporting human and goods from the coastal areas to the hinterland. Obong 1987 is of the view that the location of Nigeria's inland waterways are sure that if developed, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Niger, Chad, and Cameroon could be linked and could be of strategic importance to the economic community of West African states. Nevertheless, Oni owes that the future looks bright for the development of multimodal transport based on complementary inland waterways improvement. At least, the lower Niger River is being dredged as ports and jetties along the River Niger receive construction rehabilitation. Pipeline transport. Pipeline mode of transport is mainly used in the transport of crude oil to the refinery. For instance, the refinery in Kaduna is being supplied with crude oil from the south through a pipeline. At the Bonny Port, crude oil tankers are loaded by submarine pipeline. This mode of transport has the advantage of relieving the road of petroleum tankers that cause damage and accident. Its greatest challenge is that it can be vandalized by the militant or encourage siphoning of oil by some unpatriotic Nigerians. The communication subsector. Communication in this context embraces the means of sending messages and orders, which include mail, telephone, telegraph, telex, radio, and television. Communication has since 1970 absorbed huge amounts of public capital expenditure. Evidences have shown that this has not been reflected in its efficiency or rationality. Neither has the huge expenditure in any way promoted the integration of the national economy or its self-reliance development. For instance, the entire telecommunication system was characterized by serious shortfall between planned and realized targets, due largely to poor management and low level of executive capacity. The quality of services was generally described as unsatisfactory, unreliable, and expensive. Communication subsector was allocated 125 million under the second National Development Plan period, 1970 to 1971, out of which only 44 million was spent. This did not improve the post and telecommunications services. A massive capital expenditure of 1.779 billion was sunk into this sector under the period of the third development plan to raise the number of telephone lines to 552,000 by 1980. Communication was the target of much subsector expenditure. By 1990, it was reported that telephone lines increased only to 241,000 as against the targeted 552,000. Efficiency of the postal system was not better off, as it has distinctly deteriorated over the past decade, thereby making communication between people, institutions, and organizations in various parts of the country much more difficult. However, the sector improved largely following the introduction of the global satellite system mobile communication in 2001. For instance, from $50 million in 1991, cumulative foreign private investment rose remarkably to $7.5 billion as at December 2005. At this same December 2005, the sector had 1,223,258 connected fixed lines and 18,587 mobile lines, giving a combined subscriber strength of 19,810,258 lines, with a tele density of 15.7 lines per 100 inhabitants. The contribution of the subsector to GDP increased by 27.8% from 6.7 billion in 2004 to 8.6 billion at the end of 2005. About 5,500 professionals are directly employed in the communication industry, and over 450,000 indirect jobs were created by the sector in 2005, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria report 2005. Despite this growth, the quality of services provided by the operators in the industry has remained unsatisfactory, possibly due to poor interconnectivity between the different networks and other unidentified factors. According to CBN 2005, the problems of constant call dropping, message and call failures, and overloaded billing have not been effectively addressed, despite numerous complaints from the customers by the government agency that regulate the activities of the players in the communication industry. Summary. In this study session, we proved that transportation is an indispensable element in the socio-economic development of any nation. It was made obvious that all the modes of transport in Nigeria have room for improvement. We equally acknowledge that the cost of constructing transportation facilities in Nigeria is generally high because of our difficult topography. The last session of this study section dwelled on the communication subsector. This is the end of study session 6. Thanks for listening.